The galaxy was a busy and noisy place, full of different species who all thought they were wise and civilized. Planets glowed with cities, ships moved through the stars like silver insects, and thousands of governments argued in endless meetings about peace, trade, and power. For most of them, Earth was a small blue world on the edge of known space, strange and unpredictable. Humans were respected, yes, but also feared. Every species had stories about them, how they had come from a planet that tried to kill them every day, how they had learned to survive everything from hunger to cold to war. The Council of Species called them Deathworlders, not because humans wanted death, but because they had learned to live beside it. For a long time, humans kept to themselves. They traded with other worlds, helped during disasters, and sent scientists to study alien cultures. Still, many alien leaders whispered that humans were dangerous. They remembered old wars, times when humanity had fought with terrifying stubbornness, never surrendering, never stopping until the enemy was broken. Some said humans were too emotional, too unpredictable. Others said that if humans ever truly united, the galaxy would shake. Then came the Threxians. They were not new, but they had become powerful and cruel. Their empire grew fast, swallowing weaker worlds and forcing others to pay tribute. They claimed they only wanted order, but everyone knew their version of order meant slavery and fear. When the Threxians attacked the border systems, the galaxy trembled. Whole planets fell silent overnight. Refugees fled to neutral worlds, telling stories of burning cities and black skies. The Council of Species met in emergency session, their chambers buzzing with panic. The question was simple: who could stop the Threxians? Someone whispered the answer: humans. The word spread like a spark. Some were hopeful, others terrified. "If the Deathworlders fight," said one ambassador, "they will end the war quickly." Another shook his head. "Yes, but at what cost?" Everyone remembered what humans had done in past wars, the way they used every weapon, every trick, every ounce of courage. They never fought halfway. To call on humanity was to invite something unstoppable. Finally, the Council decided to send envoys to Earth. Their ships traveled for weeks through folded space, carrying gifts, letters, and carefully written pleas. The ambassadors practiced their speeches over and over, trying to sound respectful without sounding afraid. When they reached the solar system, they were surprised by what they saw. Earth was calm. No war fleets, no visible weapons, just quiet continents glowing softly in the night. The envoys expected military parades or proud speeches, but instead, they were welcomed politely. The humans listened, asked questions, offered food and drink. They smiled often, but their eyes gave nothing away. In the great hall of the United Earth Assembly, the lead ambassador from the Council spoke. He was a tall being from the Seraph Union, with glassy blue skin that shimmered under the lights. His voice trembled slightly as he began. "We come with a request," he said. "The galaxy is at war again. The Threxian Dominion has broken the peace. Worlds are falling. We beg for your wisdom and restraint. Do not join this war. Your strength, if unleashed, could destroy us all." The hall was silent. Humans watched, their faces calm, unreadable. One of them, a woman named Admiral Reyes, leaned forward. "You ask us not to fight," she said slowly. "You believe our involvement would make things worse?" The ambassador nodded. "Yes, we have seen what your kind can do when threatened. The Threxians are cruel, but if you fight them, there may be nothing left when the war is done." The humans exchanged glances. Then the president of Earth stood. He was an older man, his hair silver, his voice soft but steady. "We understand your fear," he said. "We have known fear ourselves. But peace is not made by pretending danger does not exist. Tell me, Ambassador, if the Threxians conquer your worlds, will they stop there?" The ambassador hesitated. "Perhaps not," he admitted. "But if you fight them, there will be no Threxians left at all. We would rather live in fear than die in silence." The human leader nodded slowly, as if tasting the weight of those words. Then he smiled, polite but distant. "Your message is heard," he said. "Earth will consider it." The meeting ended with bows and formal handshakes. The envoys left the hall relieved but uneasy. They had said what they came to say, yet something about the humans' quietness unsettled them. There had been no anger, no promise, no threat, just silence, heavy and thoughtful, like the air before a storm. During the following days, the ambassadors were shown around Earth. They visited the oceans, the forests, the ancient cities rebuilt after old wars. They saw children playing under clear skies, soldiers training in calm discipline, and factories humming with energy. Everywhere they looked, they saw balance, strength wrapped in peace. The humans did not boast about their history, but small details told their story. Statues of fallen heroes, memorials carved with names, and songs sung at dusk for those who never returned from battle. The visitors began to understand why the galaxy feared Earth. It was not because humans loved war. It was because they knew exactly what it cost. Before leaving, the Seraph ambassador asked for one last audience. "What will you do?" he asked the president. "If the Threxians come closer, will you fight?" The president looked out the window toward the stars. "We will do what must be done," he said simply, "as we always have." That night, the ambassadors departed Earth. As their ships left orbit, they saw the planet growing smaller behind them, a blue gem surrounded by the blackness of space. They felt relief, but also a strange sadness, like people leaving a sleeping giant they hoped would never wake. Back in the council chambers, the ambassadors gave their report. "The humans have agreed to stay out of the war," they said. Many delegates sighed with relief. "Good," said the Thalorian representative. "Perhaps we can negotiate with the Threxians ourselves." A few others were not so sure. "Did they promise?" one asked. The Seraph ambassador hesitated. "Not exactly," he admitted. "They listened. They said they would consider it." Weeks passed. The war worsened. The Threxians destroyed more colonies, enslaved more species. The council sent desperate pleas for negotiation, but the Dominion only laughed. Meanwhile, Earth remained silent. No messages, no fleets, no movement. It was as if humanity had vanished behind a curtain. Still, whispers spread. Traders claimed to see human ships leaving the Sol system in small, unmarked groups. Soldiers said they heard coded transmissions on old military channels. Others dismissed it as rumor. "If the Deathworlders were moving," said one diplomat, "the stars themselves would tremble." The council continued to beg for peace, signing weak treaties, making hollow promises. They believed they had prevented the humans from joining the war, and perhaps that was enough. Yet in quiet corners of the galaxy, those who knew humans better were not so sure. They remembered a simple truth taught by history. When humanity grows silent, it is never because they are afraid. It is because they are deciding. So the galaxy waited, caught between fear and hope. The Threxians continued their conquest. The council continued its meetings, and Earth remained a mystery, still quiet and watching. Some believed the humans had truly chosen peace. Others feared that they were only waiting for the right moment to show what peace meant to them. And far away, in the deep reaches of space, beyond the council's scanners, something vast and dark began to move. Weeks passed after the ambassadors left Earth, and the galaxy drifted deeper into fear. The Threxian Dominion was no longer content with border raids. They moved like fire through dry grass, swallowing systems in days. Their fleets came without warning, their weapons turned oceans into steam, and their commanders laughed as cities burned. The Council of Species had promised safety to the smaller worlds, but their promises turned to dust. Every call for help met with silence or excuses. On the planet Nethra, children watched from underground shelters as the skies glowed red. On Kor, a world once famous for its music, the last song ever played was a distress signal that never reached anyone. Whole civilizations fell before the Council could even meet to discuss them. It was a slow-motion disaster, one that everyone saw coming but no one could stop. The Council leaders gathered again in their shining hall, voices rising in anger and panic. The Threxians had broken every treaty, and still the Council argued about rules, votes, and formalities. Some wanted to fight. Others wanted to surrender before the Dominion reached their homeworlds. "We must negotiate," shouted the Tarlian delegate, his silver fins trembling. "The Threxians are cruel, yes, but perhaps they will accept tribute." "Tribute?" hissed another. "You would sell your own worlds for safety?" The arguments went in circles until someone mentioned Earth again. The word humans filled the air like smoke. Every delegate fell quiet. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, the old Seraph ambassador who had visited Earth stood up. "We told them to stay out of this war," he said slowly. "They listened. Now the Threxians destroy everything. Perhaps we were wrong." The room exploded in noise. "No, if humans fight, they will burn the stars," shouted one. "If they do not fight, we all die," said another. The council's leader raised her hand, her voice calm but cold. "If we ask the Deathworlders to act," she said, "we may lose the galaxy. If we do not, the Threxians will take it anyway." There was no safe choice. Before they could decide, new reports arrived. The Threxians had attacked another council world. The transmission was brief, static, screams, and then silence. The ambassadors looked at one another, their faces pale. One whispered, "It's too late." Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, humanity watched. From their silent stations orbiting dark planets, they recorded every transmission, every desperate plea. On the surface of Earth, the people went about their lives quietly. But deep beneath the oceans and inside mountains, vast command centers flickered with light. Men and women in uniforms spoke in calm voices, giving orders that no one outside their network could hear. One night, the sky above Earth shimmered with movement. The great orbital docks came alive. For the first time in decades, the shipyards opened, releasing craft so large they blotted out the stars. Each ship bore no flag, no color, only matte black armor that absorbed light. They were ghosts in the void. Still, Earth said nothing. No declaration, no threat, no warning. When the Threxians reached the edge of Sol territory, they sent a message to humanity. It was arrogant and cruel, filled with promises of domination. "Deathworlders," their emperor sneered through the transmission, "your time is over. You will kneel as all others have. Stay silent, and we may let your world live as a farm for our kind." The message reached the human relay stations. There was no reply. Hours later, the Threxian ships monitoring the human border vanished. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Their signals cut off as if swallowed by the void. The Dominion assumed it was a malfunction. Then another fleet disappeared. And another. Within a week, the Threxian High Command realized something terrible was happening. On the neutral world of Varan Prime, refugees crowded the ports, desperate to escape. Traders whispered of a strange light seen in the deep sectors, brief flashes like the birth of stars. Others claimed they saw ghost ships moving without sound, entering Threxian space and not returning. No one believed them until a single unmarked probe drifted into Council territory. Its hull was scorched, its memory core half melted. The data it carried showed a brief, terrible image. A Threxian war fleet torn apart in seconds by weapons no one could identify. Still, Earth remained silent. The Council met again, trembling with fear. "We must contact the humans," someone said. "If they are fighting, they must stop. They will destroy everything." The Seraph ambassador tried to send a transmission to Earth. The message was simple. "We beg you, do not escalate. Seek peace." The signal went through. For a long time, there was nothing. Then through the static came a short, calm response. "Peace will be enforced." No one understood what that meant. Some thought it was a reassurance, others a warning. Then 2 days later, every Threxian-controlled planet stopped broadcasting. The Threxian Empire tried to respond. They gathered their largest fleet, thousands of ships each armed with planet-killer weapons. They were confident. After all, they had fought hundreds of wars and won them all. They did not know what they were facing. When the humans came, they did not arrive like other armies. There were no bright lights, no battle cries. The human fleet appeared without fanfare, slipping into Threxian space as if space itself opened to let them through. Their ships did not shimmer. They absorbed the stars, vanishing into the black. The Threxians fired first. Every missile, every plasma burst vanished before hitting its target. Then the humans answered. The first strike was surgical. The Threxian command station disappeared in a flash that burned for a heartbeat, then was gone. The fleet's admiral screamed for a counterattack, but his voice cut off mid-word. His ship imploded silently, crushed by an invisible force. Within minutes, half the Threxian fleet was gone. The rest tried to flee. It made no difference. The humans pursued with mathematical precision, erasing ship after ship without hesitation. Across the galaxy, sensors flickered as if space itself was crying out. Civilizations far from the war zone felt the tremors in their systems. The Council watched in horror as their long-range scanners recorded the event. The Threxian Dominion, which had taken centuries to build, vanished in a single night. On the Threxian homeworld, the Emperor stood before his throne, surrounded by guards. He demanded a surrender message be sent to Earth. "We yield," he shouted into the microphone. "We surrender, stop." The transmission never reached its destination. The human fleet's final salvo struck the planet's surface, and the Threxian homeworld became silent forever. Afterward, the stars in that sector dimmed for days. The Council received one last transmission from the human relay stations. It was brief, only 3 words, carried on a secure frequency. Peace has returned. Then the line went dead. No more signals came from the human military. Their ships vanished from every scanner, retreating to the shadows of space as quickly as they had come. The galaxy fell quiet. Some species celebrated. "The Deathworlders saved us," they cried. Others wept. "They saved us by destroying everything." On the burned worlds of the Dominion, nothing remained alive, not even the dust. The Threxians had begged for peace, and humanity had given it to them, in the only way they knew how. The Council leaders could not sleep. They met again, arguing about what to do next. "We must confront Earth," said one delegate. "They had no right." "No right?" said another. "If not for them, we would all be dead." The Seraph ambassador, who had once begged Earth to stay silent, said nothing. He remembered the calm voice of the human president, the steady eyes that had watched him during their meeting. He understood now. The humans had listened to their plea. They had not joined the war to fight beside the Council. They had ended the war entirely. Days later, small Threxian survivors tried to send distress signals. The humans did not answer. Their fleet had already returned to the dark, hidden beyond the edges of known space. The galaxy began to rebuild, uneasy and fearful. From that day on, whenever a species argued about war, someone would whisper, "Do not call the Deathworlders." The words became a proverb. It meant, do not ask for peace unless you are ready to pay the price. In the silence that followed, the Council sent one last message to Earth. "We thank you," it said carefully. "The galaxy is safe again." There was no reply. Earth remained silent, its blue light turning slowly in the darkness, quiet and distant. Some said the humans were grieving. Others said they were preparing. No one knew for sure. All they knew was that when the Council had begged for peace, the humans had answered, not with words, but with the fleet of Deathworlders, and the galaxy, once so proud, learned what true peace costs. The human fleet appeared like a nightmare no one had prepared for. There were no bright banners, no heroic speeches, no calls to arms. They came in silence, the way storms roll in before lightning strikes. Their ships were made of dark metal that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. When they moved, they didn't hum or roar. They whispered like ghosts passing through the stars. Every sensor that tried to scan them showed nothing but shadows and static. The Threxians, confident in their strength, called them cowards for hiding. They had no idea they were already surrounded. When the first attack began, it lasted only 30 seconds. A Threxian destroyer patrol near the edge of their empire picked up a faint signal, then vanished. No distress call, no explosion, nothing. Another ship nearby tried to investigate, and its crew watched in horror as the destroyer was simply gone, leaving behind a cloud of glowing dust. The captain tried to retreat, but before he could give the command, his own ship split apart as if an invisible hand had crushed it. The Threxian High Command dismissed the reports as nonsense. "Mechanical failure," they said. "Malfunction." Yet ship after ship went missing. Then came the first full fleet engagement. It happened in the Oris Belt, a region of frozen rocks circling a dying star. The Threxians had stationed 6,000 ships there, a mighty armada. The humans arrived without warning. From the darkness came lights that were not weapons but signals, coded pulses that confused the Threxian systems. Then without a sound, the black ships opened fire. The weapons they used were unlike anything seen before. There were no visible beams, no glowing plasma bolts, just bursts of invisible energy that tore through shields and armor alike. Ships folded in half. Engines turned to slag. Commanders screamed orders that no one could carry out. Within 10 minutes, the entire Threxian fleet was destroyed. Only one ship survived long enough to send a transmission. The message was short, the voice trembling. "They are not fighting for victory," it said. "They are cleansing." Then the transmission ended. Across the galaxy, every species tuned their long-range sensors toward the war zone. What they saw terrified them. The humans didn't conquer planets, they erased the Threxian presence completely. Cities vanished, fortresses melted, orbital stations turned into clouds of debris. The attacks were clean and methodical, leaving nothing behind but silence. It wasn't war. It was extermination, precise and deliberate. Inside the Threxian command halls, panic grew. The Emperor raged, his claws tearing at the metal floor. "They are only humans," he shouted. "We will crush them like insects." But his generals were pale and silent. They had seen the battle reports. They had seen the numbers, every engagement ending in total loss. The humans didn't take prisoners. They didn't respond to surrender signals. They didn't even broadcast demands. A few Threxian commanders tried to understand. They recorded human attack patterns, analyzed their tactics, and found a horrifying pattern. The humans never fought defensively. Every strike was designed to remove the ability to fight again. If a Threxian ship retreated, the humans didn't chase. They waited, knowing that fear would destroy morale faster than any weapon. The Threxians had built their empire through domination and terror, but now they were facing a species that understood both better than they ever had. In one battle, the Threxians tried something desperate. They lured a human fleet into a trap near their home system. Hidden cannons lined the asteroids, ready to fire from all directions. When the human ships appeared, the Threxians unleashed everything they had. Thousands of plasma bursts filled space, painting the darkness with blinding light. For a moment, the Threxians cheered. Then, as the light faded, their smiles turned to horror. The human ships were untouched. Their armor shimmered faintly, absorbing the energy like water soaking into sand. Then, one by one, the Threxian cannons went silent. Not destroyed by explosions, but by invisible waves of energy that disabled everything mechanical. The asteroid defenses went dark, their systems dead. The Threxian fleet tried to retreat, but their engines failed. The humans moved in, silent as shadows, and finished it. Not one Threxian survived. The news spread faster than light. The Council of Species watched in stunned disbelief. They had begged humans not to fight, fearing this exact thing. Now they saw that their fears had been too small. This was beyond vengeance, it was purpose. Humanity was not just ending a war. They were making sure it could never start again. The galaxy's communication networks filled with rumors. Some said the humans had created living weapons, ships with minds of their own. Others whispered that humanity had made a pact with death itself, trading their souls for victory. In truth, the humans didn't need magic or monsters. They had something far more dangerous: unity. Every soldier in the human fleet knew their mission. Every captain followed the same quiet rule: no hesitation, no cruelty, only efficiency. They didn't fight for glory. They fought because they believed peace could not exist until violence was impossible. In their hearts, they carried the memory of Earth's own history, centuries of war, pain, and survival. They knew what it meant to live under threat, and they had sworn it would never happen again, not to them and not to anyone else. In one of the last major battles, the humans entered the Threxian capital system. The Emperor's palace glittered on the planet's surface, surrounded by defense satellites and energy shields the size of continents. The Threxians believed themselves safe. Then every satellite went dark at once. The shields flickered and failed. The humans appeared in orbit, their ships forming a ring around the planet like a noose. The Emperor broadcast one final message. "You cannot destroy an empire," he shouted into the void. "We are eternal." The humans did not reply. Instead, a calm voice came over every Threxian frequency, speaking in perfect Threxian language. "Eternal things do not burn," the voice said. "You will." The bombardment began. It was not wild or chaotic. Each strike hit a precise target: military bases, command centers, weapon factories. The humans did not aim for civilians, yet the destruction was so complete that the planet itself began to collapse. The surface cracked, oceans boiled, and the palace melted into dust. When the bombardment ended, there was nothing left alive. In the following days, the human fleet moved through the rest of Threxian space, finishing what they had started. Worlds that had served the Dominion were liberated, but not all rejoiced. Some saw the human ships and fell to their knees, believing gods had come. Others fled, afraid that they would be next. The humans said nothing. They simply completed their work, then vanished into the stars once more. When it was over, the galaxy was silent. The Threxian Dominion, once the most feared power, was gone. Their name was erased from official records, their symbols banned. The Council of Species met in emergency session, their faces pale and shaken. "They ended it," someone whispered. "The war's over." "Over?" another delegate said bitterly. Or has it only begun? The Seraph ambassador, who had once begged the humans for restraint, sat quietly at the edge of the chamber. He remembered the human president's words, "We will do what must be done." Now he understood. Humanity's idea of peace was different from everyone else's. It was not gentle, not forgiving. It was peace through absolute control. The humans had decided that if the galaxy could not protect itself, they would do it for them, no matter the cost. After the war, the survivors tried to rebuild. They found Threxian space empty, stripped clean. Not a single human ship remained, as if the fleet had dissolved into the void. But sometimes traders passing through dark sectors reported strange sightings, shadows moving faster than light, signals that vanished when traced. People began to say the Deathworlders still watched from afar, waiting, guarding the fragile peace they had carved from destruction. Children on distant planets grew up hearing the story. "Do not start wars," parents warned. "The humans will come." And every species remembered the image of those black ships gliding through the stars, silent, unstoppable, and merciless. In the years that followed, no empire dared to build weapons of conquest again. Every leader knew what had happened to the Threxians. The humans had proven a truth older than any star. Those who beg for peace must be careful whom they ask. The galaxy began to heal, slowly, carefully. But deep in the quiet heart of Earth's command center, light still glowed. A few humans sat before their screens, watching distant worlds, listening to whispers across the void. They did not celebrate. They did not speak of victory. They simply waited, because they knew peace never lasts forever, and if war ever returned, so would they. When the last Threxian signal went silent, the stars above their empire turned quiet for the first time in centuries. The war that had burned across half the galaxy ended not with peace talks or treaties, but with silence so deep it felt unnatural. The Council of Species waited for messages from the front lines, but none came. No reports, no survivors, no distress calls. Just static. Whole regions of space that once shimmered with communication now looked like black mirrors. Something inside everyone changed that day. The galaxy had begged humanity to stay out of war, and now they saw what happened when the Deathworlders decided to move anyway. The Threxians were gone, completely gone. Not defeated, not surrendered, simply erased. Their home planets were ashes. Their fleets were vapor, their cities turned into glass deserts. It was as if the universe itself had deleted them. The Council's sensors picked up strange radiation patterns where the Threxian worlds had been. The human fleet had used weapons no one had ever seen before. Clean, precise, terrifyingly quiet. They did not scorch the stars. They erased war like a surgeon cutting out a disease. At first, the galaxy celebrated. The news spread quickly. The Threxians are finished. Crowds gathered in cities across dozens of worlds. Fireworks exploded in alien skies. Refugees wept and hugged strangers. For the first time in years, people could sleep without the fear of invasion. The Council sent out a formal statement. The peace of the galaxy has been restored. It sounded noble and proud, but everyone knew the truth. The Council hadn't saved anyone. The humans had days passed, then weeks. Humanity gave no answer to the Council's messages. The diplomats who had once spoken warmly to other species now said nothing. The great blue world of Earth stayed quiet, orbiting its sun like a secret. The human fleet, hundreds of ships that had crossed the stars like shadows, was nowhere to be found. No one knew if they had returned home or simply vanished into deep space. The silence became unbearable. The Council demanded answers. "They cannot just destroy an entire empire and walk away," shouted the Thalorian representative during a heated session. "We must call them here, demand an explanation." "An explanation?" replied another delegate, her voice trembling. "You would summon the Deathworlders again? After what they've done?" Fear began to grow inside the very governments that had once begged for humanity's help. They had seen the Threxians burn, and they realized something terrible. If the humans could do that to the Dominion, they could do it to anyone. Still, the Council sent a message. "To the United Earth Command," it read, "we request your presence before the Council to discuss the future of interspecies relations and your role in the restoration of peace." It was polite, diplomatic, full of careful words meant to hide their fear. For 3 days, there was no answer. Then a signal came, not from Earth but from one of their orbital stations. The transmission was short and calm. Earth acknowledges receipt of your message. There will be no discussion. Peace stands. The council members looked at each other, confused and frightened. No one dared to reply. It felt less like a refusal and more like a warning. While the politicians argued, strange stories began to spread from the outer colonies. Miners claimed to see black ships gliding silently past asteroid belts. Cargo vessels reported losing power for hours, only to find strange human signatures on their sensors afterward. Some said the humans were still watching the galaxy, unseen but present, ensuring no one dared start another war. The rumors grew until people began calling them the ghosts of peace. Meanwhile, across the former Threxian worlds, scavengers tried to explore what was left. They found no bodies, no cities, only smooth plains of melted stone. Some places were so radioactive that machines melted after a few minutes. Others were cold and lifeless, as if drained of all energy. A team of scientists landed on what used to be the Threxian capital. They found a crater hundreds of miles wide, perfectly circular, glowing faintly with blue light. At its center stood a single piece of metal, black and sharp-edged. When they scanned it, they found human symbols carved into its surface. The translation was simple: peace will be enforced. The discovery spread like wildfire. News networks replayed the image of that metal shard again and again. It became the most famous symbol in the galaxy. To some, it was a monument to courage. To others, a warning that peace had a price no one should ever pay again. As months passed, fear slowly replaced celebration. The council began receiving complaints from citizens on various planets. People didn't feel safe anymore, not because of the Threxians, but because of the humans. Parents told their children bedtime stories about invisible fleets watching from the shadows. Merchants whispered that human patrols were still out there, monitoring every radio signal, ready to destroy any threat. The phrase "don't anger the Deathworlders" became common across languages. It meant don't do anything stupid. The council tried to act normal. They rebuilt destroyed systems, reopened trade routes, and sent relief ships to war-torn planets. But they couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Every time a military project began, every time a new ship design was tested, someone would ask, "What if Earth sees this?" On one small world near the edge of the old Threxian border, a young soldier found something unusual: a wrecked drone, black and smooth like obsidian. When he touched it, the machine powered on, projecting a hologram of a human officer. The officer's face was calm, his tone neutral. "If you build weapons of war again," the voice said, "we will return." Then the drone shut down. The council tried to hide the discovery, but secrets never stay hidden long. Soon everyone knew. Every empire, every small colony, every military leader now lived under the shadow of those words. The humans hadn't just won a war, they had taken control of fear itself. Back on Earth, life returned to something like normal. The people were quiet, reflective. There were no parades, no victory songs. The soldiers who returned home spoke little of what they had seen. Some said that after so much death, no one felt like celebrating. The government said nothing. The news networks broadcast stories about rebuilding efforts and scientific achievements, but no one mentioned the war. It was as if the whole planet had decided to forget. Yet inside Earth's command centers, deep underground, screens still glowed. Thousands of eyes still watched the stars. The fleet that had vanished was not gone. It waited. Hidden bases on moons, asteroids, and silent stations near black holes kept constant watch. The humans knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Peace was temporary. Sooner or later, someone would test it again. In time, the galaxy began to adapt. Trade resumed. People laughed again. New governments rose in the territories once ruled by the Threxians. Children born after the war grew up hearing the stories as legends. To them, the humans were mythical figures, guardians of peace and destruction at once. Yet even they felt a chill whenever they looked up at the night sky. The council, desperate to reassert control, tried to create new laws, restrictions on weapon research, bans on military expansion. Publicly, they said it was to preserve peace. Privately, everyone knew the real reason. They were afraid that if any species looked too dangerous, the humans would come back. The phrase "peace will be enforced" hung over every discussion like a ghostly echo. Years later, during a ceremony to mark the anniversary of the war's end, the Sarith ambassador, now old and tired, gave a speech. "Once," he said, "we begged humanity to stay out of war. We feared what they might do, and they listened, but not as we hoped. We begged for peace, and they gave it to us by making sure no one could ever fight again. Perhaps that is mercy, or perhaps it is something colder. The audience was silent. That night, after the ceremony ended, astronomers noticed something strange. A brief flash of light near the galactic rim, just one, small and quick. Some thought it was a star dying. Others said it was a signal, a quiet reminder from the Deathworlders that they were still there. No one knew for sure. But across the galaxy, people slept uneasily, dreaming of black ships gliding between the stars, keeping watch. They dreamed of the silence after the war, and of the heavy truth that followed. Peace had been restored, yes, but it was not the peace of harmony. It was the peace of control, the peace of fear, the peace enforced by those who had built their safety out of fire. Every civilization now understood the cost of begging for peace. It meant surrendering trust to beings who had already mastered survival, pain, and loss. Humanity had not simply won, they had changed the galaxy forever. The Threxians were gone, the council was shaken, and the stars themselves seemed quieter, as if afraid to disturb the human sleep. And so the silence remained, a silence deeper than any war could ever create. Years passed, then decades. The story of the Deathworlders became less a warning and more a whisper told across the stars. Children who once feared the name human grew up hearing it as part of bedtime tales, as if the stories were too old to be real. The galaxy healed slowly, scars fading into dust, yet deep down everyone knew the truth. The peace they lived in was not born of trust or love. It was the peace of fear, the kind that holds a trembling hand over its own mouth and dares not speak too loud. In the shining halls of the Galactic Council, new faces sat where the old ones once argued. Time had taken the veterans of the war, leaving behind leaders who had never seen a human ship with their own eyes. These new politicians spoke boldly, not knowing what silence used to mean. They said the humans were exaggerated myths, that the stories of the fleet of Deathworlders were the frightened words of an older, weaker age. They began to speak of power again, of fleets and defenses, of expansion and pride. The people, tired of fear, started to believe them. The Deathworlders are gone, they said. No one has seen them in centuries. Maybe they destroyed themselves. Maybe they were only human after all, mortal, fragile, temporary. And just like that, the galaxy began to forget what it had once begged for. On a distant planet near the ruins of the old Threxian systems, archaeologists unearthed something extraordinary. A massive underground vault sealed with black steel and strange symbols. The language was human. It took months to decode, but when they finally translated the message carved across the door, their hearts went cold. It read, "Do not awaken what sleeps for your safety." The scientists were thrilled. They thought it was history, an ancient artifact from a forgotten era. They ignored the warning. When the vault finally opened, the sensors went wild. Radiation, magnetic storms, power spikes. Inside was a single chamber filled with hundreds of stasis pods, each one containing human soldiers in deep sleep. Their armor was black and silent, their weapons sealed beside them. The lead scientist tried to record everything, but the systems failed. The last thing she saw before the lights went out was one pod slowly opening. The next day, every communication line from that planet went dead. When the council sent an investigation team, they found the colony abandoned. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty cities and that same black shard planted in the center of the main square. It carried a message engraved into its surface. Peace stands. Panic spread like fire. The council tried to hide it, but too many people had seen the reports. The old fear returned overnight. On hundreds of worlds, people whispered that the Deathworlders had awakened again, that they were watching the stars once more. Governments rushed to prove they had no weapons of mass destruction, no secret armies, nothing that could threaten peace. Trade ships canceled routes, fleets stood down, and scientists stopped military research altogether. The galaxy fell quiet again, just as it had long ago. In a dark chamber far beneath Earth's surface, ancient machines stirred. Command centers that had been silent for centuries began to glow with life. The voice of an old artificial intelligence filled the empty halls. Status awakening protocols complete. Peacekeeping surveillance reinstated. Lights blinked across the walls, showing star maps and data from across the galaxy. The system began transmitting messages to hidden stations, silent guardians that had waited in the cold dark between stars. Somewhere deep in the blackness of space, a fleet began to move. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady, methodical, quiet. It didn't need orders. Its mission was already written long ago. Ensure peace. Eliminate war. Across the galaxy, strange phenomena started appearing again. On one world, a massive storm destroyed a military research base moments after they began testing new weapons. On another, an entire battleship vanished mid-flight, leaving only a cloud of dust and a faint energy signature matching human technology. The message was clear. The Deathworlders had not returned. They had never truly left. They had simply been waiting, watching, letting time do its work until someone threatened the fragile calm again. For most species, this realization was terrifying, yet for some it was comforting. The small, peaceful colonies on the outer rim, the ones that had suffered most during the Threxian War, began to call the humans something new: the Keepers. They built temples in their honor, not of worship but of gratitude. They said the Deathworlders had done what no one else could. They had forced the galaxy to stop killing itself. To these people, fear was a fair price for safety. They lit candles beneath statues of faceless soldiers, whispering prayers that the Keepers would continue to watch over them. Meanwhile, the Council struggled to maintain control. They debated endlessly about what to do. Some wanted to open communication with Earth again. Others argued that any message might be seen as a threat. What if they think we are preparing for war? One ambassador said, trembling. What if just talking to them wakes something worse? So they stayed silent. The council chambers became a house of whispers and paranoia. In one corner of the galaxy, a human ship, small, sleek, and black, descended quietly upon a developing planet where civil war had broken out. Two nations had been fighting for resources, both sides desperate. When the human ship appeared, its arrival stopped everything. It didn't fire a shot. It didn't even speak. It hovered above the largest battlefield for 1 hour, then released a single pulse of energy. The soldiers below dropped their weapons as their machines shut down completely. When the ship vanished, both armies were left powerless. They could not fight even if they wanted to. From that day forward, those nations began rebuilding together. They called that event the Silent Mercy. As decades turned into centuries again, the presence of the Deathworlders became something between legend and law. Every generation had its own encounter, its own quiet reminder of who truly kept the galaxy from tearing itself apart. Some began to study the old human ways, not their weapons, but their principles. They discovered writings from Earth's ancient philosophers, words about peace, balance, and responsibility. Scholars debated whether humanity had transcended into something greater, or simply built machines that never stopped obeying their last command. No one knew for sure. Back on Earth, the truth was simpler. The humans were still alive. Their civilization had grown inward, focused on knowledge, not conquest. They had learned that ruling through fear was not the same as creating peace. Yet they also knew that if they withdrew completely, chaos would return. So they maintained their fleet, their watchers, their long, silent patrols through the dark, not for dominance, but for duty. One day, a young human commander stood before the vast screens of the orbital command station. He looked at the endless stars and said quietly, "They still fear us." The old AI that had served for centuries responded in its calm voice, "Fear keeps peace." The commander frowned. "Fear isn't peace," he said. "It's just a pause before the next war." The AI said nothing. Somewhere deep in its circuits, perhaps it understood, but it had no other way to obey its mission. The commander proposed a new idea. Instead of waiting for others to break peace and then punishing them, he wanted to reach out, to teach, to guide, to help rebuild trust. His superiors hesitated. They feared that revealing themselves might bring chaos again. But the commander believed the galaxy was ready. So he sent out small, unmanned probes carrying messages of cooperation. Each probe played a single recording. Humanity watches still, but not as a warden. As a friend, if you will accept us. The first responses were cautious. Some destroyed the probes immediately, afraid it was a trick. Others listened and wept, realizing that the old myths were true. The Deathworlders were not demons, just protectors who had seen too much. Slowly, a dialogue began. Quiet, fragile, uncertain, but real. Over time, the galaxy began to change again. Fear turned into respect, and respect into something like understanding. The humans did not appear in person for many years, but their guidance shaped countless worlds. The phrase "peace will be enforced" slowly faded from public memory. A new phrase replaced it, spoken in hundreds of languages. Peace will be shared. Centuries later, when the first delegation of aliens was finally invited to Earth again, they found a planet both ancient and young. The humans greeted them with open hands, not weapons. The visitors were nervous, but the humans smiled and said, "You begged for peace once. We brought it. Now let's build it together." For the first time in millennia, the galaxy felt something new, not the silence of fear, but the stillness of hope. The Deathworlders were no longer ghosts of war. They had become the guardians of understanding. The stars, once quiet from terror, now shimmered with new songs of connection and life. And in that vast, peaceful universe, no one ever forgot the truth that had started it all. That peace begged for in fear will only last so long as fear remains. But peace built through courage and trust could last forever.